We live in a system, in a country, that charges us with the responsibility of electing our own political leaders. For some, this is a very, very serious responsibility. For others, it's not that important until the particular issue is going to impact their lives personally. Still, for others, faith plays an important role in that decision-making. In the United States, where the words "In God We Trust" are branded on each denomination of their paper money, perhaps faith should be considered a little more closely when making electoral and political decisions.
I believe that our responsibilities as Catholics and as American voters are one and the same. Clearly, we have the responsibility to participate in the elective process. And I think more than that, though, we have the responsibility to vote with our conscience.
Well, I think for anyone who's a Christian believer, whatever the principles of one's faith, intrinsically has to inform the choices one makes, even if one isn't conscious of it. You know, unconsciously, you're bringing principles and practices from your faith to bear on the situation. So yes, I mean, principles of faith are absolutely essential to sort of evaluating candidates, evaluating issues, evaluating political processes.
And to help us answer some of these questions, we've gathered two students. We're at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas. Coralina Pyer, you're a senior studying
liberal arts with a major focus in philosophy and a secondary focus in theology.
Excellent. And Joe Morton, you also have like a bunch of majors and minors.
I'm only a major in philosophy thus far,
okay,
and minors in political science and honors.
Nice. So thanks for being here. Let's just start right with the big question. You know, should faith be considered when making political decisions?
I think you have to. In short, that's the short answer.
Okay.
The more extended answer is I don't see a way around it, because in the United States, as you said, on our paper money is "In God We Trust." Yeah. Religion was very much an issue at our founding. Now it's not so much. We have the issue of separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. This is a big issue not only in our judicial system, but also in our lives at large, in political philosophy, just in the philosophy of the average person when they go to vote. Yeah. It's something that's ingrained in us, the phrase separation of church and state. We hear it constantly.
Yeah, but people don't really know what it means.
No, they don't. And there isn't much education for it. It's not something we talk about explicitly. We don't speak of what we mean when we say it. It's just understood that church and state should be separated. That is, your religion and your politics, your social beliefs should be separated.
Sorry, I was just going to interrupt for a second, because there's a difference between making political decisions, as in your political leaders, and then like the average, you know, student that has to go vote and you're making an electoral decision. So in your faith would play a role in that decision making as well?
Well, I think it, like Joe was saying, it has to. It is something that is inside of us intrinsically. Like we
you
have
can't
that.
Separate.
Right, you can't separate your faith from your belief system and who you are and how you act in your life if you are a believer of a particular faith. So I think it does play a role, but as far as political figures go,
yeah.
You know, it's...
Because you have to represent your constituents,
yeah.
right?
Yes, it's different if you stand up and say, I'm going to pass this law because I'm a Christian and this follows the Christian ideals and the Christian doctrine, and that's what I want to do and that's why I'm doing it.
Okay, as opposed to, I'm passing this law because most of my constituents believe that
right,
that's
and the people of America want this, and because here we have, you know, this, we're supposed to have a representative democracy. It's for the people, by the people, of the people. So the lawmakers and the presidents and the politicians should be making laws based on the majority of the people in the United States.
Okay, even if the majority of the people want something that's bad for the economy, let's say, or energy. We don't want energy independence. So what's the responsibility of the politician to say, well, you know what, you guys are wrong?
Well, I mean, we have plenty of presidents in the past who have disregarded all kinds of, you know, laws and ways about things and totally just, you know, did their own thing and but it ended up being for the better. You know, we have national parks now because a president overstepped his bounds.
Yes, yeah, it's true. I know that story.
You know, so, right, we have...
Okay, so, but wait, so then where do you draw the line as a politician? Maybe one day you guys will be politicians. Where it's like, well, you know what? This is what democracy says. The people want this, but you know what? I think that they're wrong. I think that this is in their best interest. So how do you balance that?
I've always believed in or ascribed to the philosophy that I wanted from my leaders more leadership than just representation.
Yeah.
I think if you're a leader in a leadership position, that means a delegate, even a lobbyist, an influential lobbyist, you need to stand up for what you believe should occur, whether that be with regard to policies, just the social makeup, or anything else. You need to stand up and you need to put your opinion forth. You say, this is the way it should be, this is what I believe to be right, and so I'm going to vote this way. Okay. I very much dislike when a politician says, well, I disagreed with this, but I voted for it because the people in my district wanted it. And well, why did we elect you? Did we really elect you just to, we could all vote on every issue. We could have a voting machine in every home, and every time there's an issue, we could. Cheaper. This isn't an absolute democracy, right? It's a representative democracy, and it is so for a reason, because even our founders didn't want the people making every single decision, because sometimes you need a little leadership. I firmly believe in that, and I'm fine with my leaders following their own conscience as opposed to doing what I believe in every issue.
I'd like to think that our leaders are well-educated, reasonable, rational people.
Some of them.
Right. I mean, I like to hope. I have a little bit faith. I have a little bit of faith in our leaders and our government and things like that. But we elect them to these positions, and if they strongly feel that it is that the people are doing something bad for themselves, then yes, it is their job to step up and lead at that point.
The term separation in church and state in the United States tends to be traced back to figures such as James Madison and Thomas Jefferson. And in a secular sense, it's interpreted as meaning that there should be no intersection between faith and morals, church and state, religion and politics. However, the First Amendment, especially the Establishment Clause to the U.S. Constitution, is not just to prevent a established church. There would be just one church that would be funded by the state and no others. But it's to enable all churches and all faiths to be able to compete for the attention of public policymakers, so that each is, in a sense, as interest groups, are able to put forth their faith perspectives in the deliberation in the legislative assembly, which leads ultimately to the public policy in the executive branch.
If the separation of church and state doesn't mean that politics and religion cannot mix, like, what do you think? Should there be a wall? Should it be a permeable wall?
Well, I think separation of church and state regards more to the established church. There being no established church in the United States. Okay. Right, because what an established church is it says the government supports the church.
So just the fact that we have freedom of...
Right, either directly or indirectly. Right now we do have a separate... The churches are not supported by the federal government. They're not supported by the taxpayers. They're supported by individual, independent parishioners upon their own will. And the fact that we do have religious tolerance and freedom, it makes churches just like any business. They compete. Okay.
Joe, did you want
to something I think is overlooked when we speak of separation of church and state. And as I said, in the United States, it's something that everyone says and no one, very few, I feel, understand. Yeah. Something that's overlooked is that if you read the writings of our founding fathers, the separation of church and state is just as much for, and I would say primarily for, religious freedom and to ensure religious freedom as it is to protect the government from religious control. We tend to refer to it as something that protects our democracy from the influence of these meddling churchmen.
Fundamentalists.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's only the case. The only persons that are concerned with religious figures meddling are those that are of a different faith. Mm-hmm. And so what I think it protects is it protects the people from having someone who is a religious extremist impose another religion upon them or restrict them from practicing their own religion. That's what the separation of church and state is meant to protect, is religious freedom. It isn't supposed to restrict religion from social life or politics. A few of our founding fathers, of course, were deists, and they didn't believe in a personal God. And so we tend to hear these phrases thrown out that are very much deist or very much unchristian, and so we think that that's what was intended. But the majority of our founding fathers didn't believe that. It was very much a Christian society in which different religions felt free to practice. They had to draw a line of separation between church and state so that no one would be prevented from practicing the same religion.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is very clear, is that the separation of church and state means exactly that. That it allows for freedom of religion, there's no one main state-sponsored religion. So it doesn't mean that if I'm a politician and I'm a Christian, that I can't make my decisions based on my own morality and my own faith, right?
Right. I mean, a lot of our founding fathers carried the belief that religion was valuable to the people, and it helped establish, morality and good people. They thought it was beneficial for, Americans to have a religious belief or be Christian or follow their religion, because it establishes ethics and morality and beliefs that, in a lot of ways, and it should in most ways, make people better for, as a whole.
Okay.
If you have everyone walking around believing we shouldn't kill people and we shouldn't steal and we shouldn't commit adultery, that, it makes our society better.
Yeah, it does.
I believe from a political perspective, or a perspective of political participation, I don't think you can separate morality from that type of political involvement. I don't think it's possible. Even if someone doesn't believe in God, even if they're an atheist, it's my opinion that then their judgments about what should be done become their morality.
Yeah, there's still a
if you define morality sort of loosely as a study of right action, well, then it doesn't matter whether it's because you believe in God or because you believe something is just the correct thing to do. Then you have to bring your morality into it. Okay. And so the question I always want to ask when I hear this, well, we have to separate church and state, you can't bring God into this, is, well, I believe in God, and that impacts certain positions I have, and I believe these are the correct things to do. And so I'm not telling you, we have to do this, and you have to believe in my God. But you can't expect me to leave my morality of it out of the question just because I do believe in a personal God.
Okay, so then where do you draw the line? Because let's say that my morality says that eating meat is equivalent to the Holocaust, and that we should all be vegetarian. Okay, and for some people maybe that is a strong faith or belief system.
And we have groups out there. I mean,
can I impose that on? I mean, that's my morality. So
that's an infringement on our individual liberties as a person. You can't. I'm almost certain you cannot pass legislation in the United States that infringes on someone's just personal freedom and liberty as a person. You can't limit what they eat, what they drink, what they see.
How many children they can have.
Right. I mean, all these things, they can limit things that are what the Christian idea sees as intrinsically evil. Those that cause harm to other people or a group of people, those things are limited. But to say, we're going to have a holocaust of cows in America, we can't eat meat, that's just, that's infringing on our right as Americans.
Yeah.
This is what I see as the genius of the American system, really, and something that I'm very much like the philosophies that led up to the American political system. I think it's very much the strong point of our system and of our society that there was an attempt made to recognize rights and to say this is what we ascribe to as a government: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. And then, of course, there are other rights identified as stemming from those. But because of those, we say those are guaranteed, they're inalienable. And so even if you have a religious belief that's other than that, if you believe, again, that eating meat is equivalent to the Holocaust, you're welcome to believe that. Yeah. You're welcome to refrain or abstain from eating meat, but you can't impose that on others. And so if you want to live in a society that does impose that on others, well, you should find somewhere else to reside. If you're happy to leave that as your personal opinion and something that you follow and you believe should be done, speak freely about it.
Yeah. What if I believe that I disagree on the definition of those rights, that freedom is actually not what, I don't know, somebody says that freedom is, or that life is only valuable when. I still have the inalienable right to life, but I don't agree. I don't agree with you on what life is. So then, who imposes whose morality on whom?
Well, we impose, humorous, I guess, but we impose sort of a judicial morality. The Supreme Court, our Supreme Court, determines what the law means.
Okay.
And so it is possible. If you have 51% of Americans suddenly believe this, that eating meat is a Holocaust.
Yeah, that was going to be my
well,
follow-up.
it is possible to change it. And
then
you would need, strictly speaking, more than 50%. You need probably need something closer to 2/3 of Americans. But if this were the case
so
for
society
50 years, and we amended the Constitution, and we elected leaders who consistently believe this, and presidents who made judicial appointments that supported these positions, then our society could change.
Should actually change.
But the point is that it's very difficult to do, and it takes a long time. And it isn't something that 51% of the population can impose.
It's also the
minority.
beauty of America. I mean, we can change our government and the Constitution, and we can make things different. You know, different states have different laws, you know, on different things. There are certain laws that are, you know, statewide. You know, no state can, or they can differ from them, but they won't get federal funding anymore.
Right.
You know, and that's something. He's right. I mean, just like it's a president can veto something, but everyone thinks that just because he vetoes something, it can never become a law. It just goes right back.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and there have been laws that have
longer.
been vetoed by the president and got voted in by 2/3 of the Senate and the House, and it becomes a law. So it's, I mean, I will say our founding fathers did a very good job at balancing out how the powers work and making sure that, you know, if one thing is bad for everyone, and maybe we thought it'd be good. The prohibition of alcohol, it was repealed 10 years later. You know, it went in 1919, and by 1933 it was repealed. And
I'm curious, because you're not politicians, you're voters. How do you decide then, as Catholics? Is it okay, for example, and if I'm going to go with the extreme here, is it okay for a Catholic to vote for someone who opposes church teaching, openly opposes church teaching?
We always have to answer to our conscience. There could be it's very difficult to come up with a hypothetical situation, because I could paint for you dozens of hypothetical situations in which the answers may go either way. So again, our responsibility is to know what the Catholic Church teaches, to internalize that, and then to apply that to the specific area that we face.
How do you decide?
As far as an individual, my own personal individual voting beliefs, it's a lot more than just church teachings. I mean, there is a whole country out there that is going to either be benefited by this president or is going to be, you know, offended and condemned by, you know, and affected in a negative way by this president. So I look at my beliefs, and those are important, and they play an important role in who I vote for, but also I have to look at what's best for the whole society of America, the whole, you know, I got to look at foreign policy, domestic policy. I've got to look at the economics, how they're going to affect all those things. Those are the most important things for me.
And there may be some issues that are the same.
Right.
Which is okay. Did you want to add something?
I don't think I've ever gone to the polls thinking, I want to vote for a candidate who's going to transform this, or most transform this into a Catholic society.
Oh yeah, of course not.
But my Catholicism very much affects my vote in that I take my morality to the polls.
Yeah.
The question, and the difficult question, is who do you vote for when no one's perfect? And that's the dilemma.
That's usually the case.
That's the dilemma we face every year.
Yeah.
We have, usually say presidential candidates, we have 2 viable candidates most years. Every so often there's a third semi-viable candidate. We have a 2-party system very much. And so you have 3 men or 3 women or a combination of those before you, and you have to choose which one you think best represents you or will take the country in the direction that you think is best. There isn't. The Pope has never run for president.
Yeah.
If he did, I would vote for him.
Yeah.
As long as, of course, he didn't officially make the Catholic Church the official religion.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right. But it's a question sometimes of a lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah.
Who do you think which issues are more important?
Yeah, just because someone's pro-life doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to blow up, you know, the Middle East.
That isn't pro-life.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
When you say pro-life, what do you mean?
Exactly. True.
In addition to looking at those, you know, I definitely walk into a polling, you know, booth or a voting booth knowing that I'm Catholic and knowing that I have a responsibility and as a Catholic to vote responsibly, as they always told us at church. But I also have to look at there are certain non-negotiables that the church has, and when I walk in there, I'm also thinking about, in addition to who's going to help our economy and who's going to, have the best kinds of policies for, here in America and abroad, I also look at who could effectively make a change or, lessen an evil that's happening here.
Exactly.
Maybe they're going to put restrictions on, stem cell research or, unjust wars or abortion and things like that. That's making more headway, I feel. The person who is actually going to realistically be
more effective.
Realistically be able to affect those things is also who I'm going to look for. Someone who, like you said, is, pro-life but wants to bomb, the Middle East. That's
for no reason.
Well, as Catholics, we have the added responsibility that goes above and beyond what a typical voter would have to do, is because we have this great source of wisdom and the teachings of the Catholic Church to help us, as I said, to inform what we should do. So how does one do that? Well, I think, again, we have, luckily, the pronouncements of several bishops on important issues such as abortion, same-sex marriage, stem cell research. And it's our responsibility to take their guidance into account and to make sure that we know exactly what the Catholic Church's teachings are on these very sensitive issues. Is that easy to do? Again, no, it's not. It requires some effort on our part, and then it requires courage to carry out what we think is right.
First and foremost, we have to study and inform ourselves of the principles of Catholic moral and social teaching, which inform our faith, so that we have as the bishops are fond of saying, especially in the U.S., that we have an informed conscience, as we evaluate our perspectives. And we also then have an obligation also to look thoroughly at the party platforms of the major political parties, the specific position papers that the candidates have put forward, and match them up against the principles of Catholic moral and social teaching that have been enunciated by our own bishops, but also ultimately by the popes through the social encyclicals. And I think this has become easier and easier to do insofar as the internet enables you to get access to materials that you would never have had before.
And I think it's more than just voting. I think that within reason and within our own circumstances, we have the result to talk openly about those. We have to participate in a process and not shirk, I should say, from speaking our mind on these issues. It's part of our responsibility. And I would think that any American would not only welcome, but indeed seek to how should I say, would seek us out to say, well, what does the Catholic Church and what do you as a Catholic think about these issues? So there is a lot of responsibility on us to know what the Catholic Church teaches, and at the same time to be very straightforward and upfront about talking about it.
This has been really, really interesting. We've covered a lot at a very kind of general level, but we've been talking about how faith and politics can mix, particularly in the United States system. If there's any comments or questions that you have, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, focus@saltandlighttv.org. We've been speaking to two seniors at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, Coralina Pyer and Joe Morton. Thanks so much, guys. This has been really good. It's been great meeting you. And thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you next time on Catholic Focus.